You're here in 2023 wondering if you should still buy the Sony a7 III. I'm gonna go ahead and save you some time and just give you the answer. Whether you're a photographer or videographer, my answer is still going to be yes, and I'm here to tell you why. Let's talk about SD cards. This camera has the capacity to write simultaneously to 2 cards. That's gonna be important to like a wedding photographer or somebody who does a bunch of commercial work. Somebody who can't afford to lose the original files. I mean, who really can at the end of the day? But especially to somebody that can't just simply go out and redo a wedding day. So if you're at risk or worried about losing your work or corrupting cards, and believe me, it has happened to me on an a7 II that writes to 1 card, this will be the camera for you. All right, let's talk about our pro number 2. Our pro number 2 is that this camera has the capability of shooting in flat picture profiles. Anything from Cine 4, which is not really a flat picture profile, it's like halfway there, S-Log and HLG3. Keep in mind that this is an option that most modern day cameras have, but nonetheless, it is available to you on this camera. Now, for those of you who don't know what a flat picture profile is, it's a process that the camera used to shoot video in order to maximize dynamic range. Let's talk about autofocus. Just like when we think about Canon, we think about color science, we think about Sony when we're talking about focus. The Sony a7 III has an advanced autofocus system. The camera has 693 phase detection points and 425 contrast detection points. This will make the camera great for anything from sports to wildlife photography. So just keep that in mind when you're making your buying decision. Our next pro is going to be that this camera has eye autofocus and animal eye autofocus. This is going to cater to those people that love taking pictures of their pet or want to offer that as a service to their clients. For those of you who don't know what eye autofocus is the camera's ability to track somebody's eye in order to maintain focus. And the Sonys have been known to do it absolutely outstandingly well. Let's talk about our next pro, which is the battery size. This camera uses something called the NPF-Z or Z for our American friends, 100 battery. Now, I'm not going to really get into the MOS and all those details, but what I will tell you is that I've taken 2 of these batteries on a 12-hour wedding day and have only had to use those 2 batteries. Keep in mind that I do have 2 cameras on me at the same time, which is an a7 II and an a7 III, and the a7 II is definitely getting some work in, so I'm sure it would be a different story. I'd probably need 3 batteries if I was solely running the a7 III. Just something to keep in mind. With that said, I can't say enough great things about the battery life of this camera. I think I've only actually killed single batteries when I've done wedding days. If I'm out and about shooting with my camera, trails or buildings or, with friends or whatever it might be, I've actually never killed a single battery. I don't know if that means I shoot very little or, maybe I just get distracted and I don't shoot enough. But nonetheless, the battery life is crazy. This next one is a negative or a positive, depending on how you look at it, but this camera does have a touchscreen. I tend to hate it. Some people tend to love it. The reason why I don't like it is because I wear a camera holster, meaning I dangle 2 cameras on my sides at all times. And sometimes if the camera bumps into my arm, it gets set off the focus. And the second I lift the camera and click, you're getting a blurry shot. If I really, really, really need to be picky about my focus, I will manually focus. Nonetheless, it's cool. The option is there, but I personally don't like it. Our next pro is that this camera does have a 5-axis image stabilization option. It's absolutely great. I think it's pretty straightforward and clear what it is, but basically if you're holding or hand holding a shot and your shutter speed is a little bit on the lower side, you're not gonna end up with blurry images. I mean, you should still do your due diligence to hold the camera still, but nonetheless, it's just a better option to have, and it's great that the a7 III has it. Again, our next option is something that every camera should have in this darn age. I mean, the a6300 that I'm filming on has it right now, but this camera shoots in 4K at 24 frames a second and up to 120 frames at 1080p. That's gonna give you that super buttery slow motion. I'm sure I'm gonna show examples of it on the screen from past work I've done. Don't judge it, it might be a little bit old, but nonetheless, it's great that this camera has it. So if you want that super slow-mo, this is where you're gonna wanna do it. My next pro is one that's actually way more important to me than a touchscreen, and it's gonna be that this camera has weather sealing. I can't afford to be canceling shoots because of the weather. Whether it's raining, snowing, sunny, or whatever it might be, I need to have those clients coming in at all times in order for me to, make a living or whatever it is that I'm doing. The last shoot that I did with a couple was an engagement shoot. We did it in the middle of basically a monsoon. And, shout outs to them for being such great sports. But the camera stood its ground. Keep in mind that just because the camera is weather sealed doesn't mean the lens is. So just make sure that you're getting a weather sealed lens. It usually will have like a ring, like a rubber ring on the connection side of the camera. So it's just something to look out for. But again, Super big shout outs to Sony for having the weather sealing on this camera. It's absolutely phenomenal. All right, guys, our first con, and believe me that the list of cons is very short on this camera, is going to be the price tag. In Canadian dollars, this camera still goes for $2,799 brand new, which is the way that I would have preferred to buy it, although I didn't because of the price tag. So these cameras still go for $1,800 on Facebook Marketplace or within that range, depending on shutter count. For those of you who don't know, I'll leave a link in the bio below. There is a website where you can check shutter count just by getting a raw file from the camera itself. Luckily, when I got this camera, it had literally like 50 shutters on it. So absolutely phenomenal that I found that pricing. I'm saying phenomenal a lot today. We're gonna start a whole thing. Phenomenal. But anyways, again, this camera is a pricey camera, but it will pay for itself. I've had it for only a couple of months and this camera has already paid for itself. So, you know, it's a great camera. Our next con is how expensive the lenses for this camera can actually be. Sony lenses have been known to be really expensive along with the Carl Zeiss options. Sure, you know, when these cameras first came out, those were your only options. So you're stuck spending thousands of dollars on lenses if you just needed a couple. Luckily, Tamron, Voltrek, Sigma have all jumped into the third-party Sony lens market, and they're making really competitive lenses for a great value price. For example, the one that I'm using now is a 16mm Sigma, which I believe was $500 at a 1.4 aperture, which is a great buy. Maybe I'll do a review on it. We've gotten to the point of the video where I didn't want to talk about this, but unfortunately I'm going to have to. And I'm not sure if it's been acknowledged enough in the market for A7 III or on YouTube. I've seen some articles about it on Reddit, but it's just something that I've noticed right away. The first day I got this camera, I accompanied it with the A7 II on an engagement shoot and noticed that the highlights were pink-ish. And at first I thought it might be some sort of user error. I factory reset the camera. I went through the settings myself. I have no picture profiles on. It has nothing to do with the white balance. Did some research on my own, and it turns out that the LCD screen for the A7 III is just a cheap LCD screen, and the quality of it, for whatever reason, I said it, the quality of it for some reason makes it have some sort of a magenta pink tone to the highlights. The EVF on this camera does not have that same problem, and the pictures themselves do not have that problem, and it's very minuscule, but at the same time, if I'm forking out close to $3,000 or $1,800 for a used camera, I want it to work properly. Why would its predecessor, the Sony A7 II, have a better screen? It doesn't have this problem than the newer, you know, younger brother. It just doesn't make sense to me. You know, I'm thinking about reaching out to Sony, see what they say, but at the same time, it seems like many people have, and if all came to the same results, which is nothing. They have the screen replaced, and we just end up in the same place. And wow, it's getting bright in here. My final thoughts on this camera. I mean, look at this. I had it wrapped in like a military kind of camo. I really, really like that. My final thoughts on this camera is that it's absolutely still usable. And that's kind of the purpose of this channel. I want to bring light to used gear that is still very competitive in today's market. I think sometimes we get caught up wanting to chase that new shiny object with the flip out screen that flips, you know, all kinds of angles. But at the same time, I'm just reminding you guys that you don't have to go out there and buy a $5,000 camera just because it's the newest thing. Having the newest camera or having an older camera is not going to impede you from doing a professional job. The only thing that's going to impede you from providing professional work is your skills and ability. And again, that's something that's going to come with time as you learn and pick it up. Again, the Sony A7 III, great camera, world-renowned focus. And I'm going to go ahead and play some of my photos on the screen so you can see what I have done and what I do. And hopefully you guys enjoy the video. If you guys really, really, really want to support me and enjoy the content, as I see many of you are not subscribed, I put a lot of time and effort into these videos and would appreciate a like or a subscribe, or even just leave a comment below. Let me know what I can improve on. Again, I'm new to YouTube and I'm hoping that you're really enjoying the content. That's going to be it for me today, guys. I appreciate your time. Take care.